of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
A couple of announcements up front. We have a couple changes to our agenda tonight. 5.2, which is discussion about chip soil, has been pulled, and one item has been added. 5.8, which is a memorandum of understanding with CowP, which is one of the unions of the city to discuss phased retirement. So we will add those two items, and I just want to say to people in the audience and people watching that the city is always looking for people to serve on commissions and committees and boards, and if there's an interest out there in serving, it's very simple. Just go to the website. There's an application on there, a one-page application. You can check off which one of the commissions or boards you might be interested in, and the city clerk will keep that on file and will certainly consider you. So if you want to get involved in the city, that's the way to do it. Also, I'd like to thank everybody that was involved in Earth Day on Saturday here in Winona. I was not able to attend, but I heard really good things about the crowd and all the activities and everything that went on. So thank you for all that work. And I also want to just finish with kind of an announcement here. We had 7 students that represented the city of Winona at the Minnesota State High School League State Speech Meet last Friday from both Winona Senior High School and Cotter High School. And we had a very special winner, Aiden Beckman, whose mother works here, Deb Beckman, was named the Class A Great Speeches State Champion. So that's quite an honor, and we want to congratulate Aiden on that achievement. And that's all I have, so I'll turn it over to the city manager.
Just one announcement. We are working on setting up the public meeting on the proposed Broadway improvements and setting up our test case. And so that we're hoping that we can get that in early May. And we'll let you know as soon as we can find a date and a location.
Anything else?
That's all.
Okay, thank you. Roll call.
Mayor Peterson.
Here.
Councilman Thurley.
Here.
Craig.
Here.
Alexander. Here. Iden. Here. Borzakowski.
Here.
Double.
Here.
Under the petitions, requests, and communications, item 2.1 is the 2015 Steamboat Days Agreement. And the dates for the festival are Wednesday, June 17th through Sunday, June 21st. And Christine Duhlman is the president this year, and she is here if you have questions.
State your name and address, please.
Good
Welcome.
evening. My name is Christine Duhlman. I'm the 2015 Steamboat Days president this year. And what we have before you for approval today is approval of our annual agreement that you see every year, along with our licensing requirements needed for the festival. We did provide a summary sheet for you tonight that just kind of outlined all of our events, very similar to what we've done in the past, although we do have a few notable changes that I thought I would just highlight. And then I do have some representation here to answer some specific questions if you have questions regarding those changes. As I mentioned, things are pretty much similar to our events that we've had in the past. The craft show, we have done some relocation of that over the past few years, and we are looking to relocate that this year to the 111 Riverfront building parking lot. That's held on Saturday, June 20th. We always hold it on that Saturday. We do have a new event this year, which is the BMX bike show, and we'll have 2 performances at Levy Park on Sunday night. So again, a new event for us and a new location for that. A change to the Grand Parade, always on Sunday, but this year we're looking at opening up the time to 12:01 instead of doing it at 12:31. 2 of the more significant changes is one to the BK 5K race course, which is held on that Saturday. Typically that's always been held around East Lake Winona, and now we're proposing to change that course, which will actually now cross Huff Street and require a closure for that. Details were provided in the agreement for that, but I do have representation here if you have questions about that course. And then the other more notable change is the car show and auction. always held on the Saturday of Steamboat Days, but we are actually proposing to move that event this year to the following Saturday, which is June 27th. Much debate on our committee on whether or not to move it or not move it, but we felt that because we are competing against the Back to the 50s car show held in St. Paul the same weekend as Steamboat Days, that we thought it would be best to move it to the following Saturday and hopefully, again, bring more people in to see the show and not have to compete with that. As far as where it's going to be held, still on 3rd Street and in that surrounding area, very similar to what we've done in the past. The bigger change will be where the auction is being held, and this year we're proposing to move that to the parking lot at the corner of 2nd and Center Streets, and that's where we have the beverage garden set up, which is the weekend before. So just a highlight of a few of the more notable changes. Happy to answer any questions, and again, have Jim Rumlinger with the car show and Jeremy Johnson here to speak to BK 5K if you have any specific questions relative to that.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
I'd make a motion to adopt the attached resolution.
Second.
Motion by Michelle,
Thank you very
seconded by
much.
Jerry. Any further discussion?
I have some questions,
Yeah.
Mayor. Now that we have a motion before us. The area for consumption during the car show, I think we have a action item later on for the actual license itself. I think it says 3.2, and that's correct.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, and then for the water ski show on the Mississippi, we just, last meeting, in fact, approved docking of a new tour boat at Levy Park. Will the water ski show affect that business?
It should not. I know Maynard has been very active in getting the necessary approvals in place with the river authorities. And Maynard, I am not aware of any issues with the docking.
Shouldn't be any problems, and we've also talked to Terry Ward as well, so I think
Yeah.
everything will be fine.
But the people with the Mississippi Explorer know about it and are aware of
We'll
the,
make sure they know, but it's only that particular time from 6 to 9 on Saturday.
okay,
And they'll have a little small dock that will come up themselves, but they won't interfere.
all right. Because those are the only questions I had. I'm appreciative of everything the committee has done over the years, and for this year, it looks like a great festival, and we can just hope that the weather will cooperate on both weekends then.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? George?
Does Jim have any comments on the car show, or?
Not really, we just had to move that, car show, get it off back to the 50s to, keep the auction with the car show, because they're competing with back to the 50s also, and they can't bring the cars from the cities down here. And we've already got car clubs calling that want to come to the show already, and while we're not on the back to the 50s weekend. So it's gonna grow probably to a 550, 600 car show in the next couple of years.
Wow, that's great.
Real easy. So, but, you know, Monica, you said I don't have the latest version of that map, but talking to Dave there, we could use that 2nd Street the way you had it planned on the second map. And then barricade off that Center Street with it. That'll work for us. Good.
Yeah, that's part of this, I think what you're asking for is already part of the motion, because that's the map we have.
I have
Good.
the map here, though.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Jim.
Any other questions?
Guess not.
Good.
Thank
Now,
you.
good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other comments or questions? If not, we'll vote. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries.
Item 3.2 is a request for the licenses for the 2015 Steamboat Days Festival. This would be for temporary on-sale wine and malt liquor license for the beverage tent for Wednesday through Saturday, a temporary on-sale 3-2 malt liquor license for Sunday the 21st, and for Saturday the 27th. And I would note the state statute limits nonprofits to 4 consecutive days of strong beer and wine. So that's why those other days are 3-2. And then also a carnival license for June 17th through June 21st.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Jerry, seconded by Michelle. Any comments or questions? Hearing none, we'll vote. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries.
Item 3.3 is the Winona National Bank Summer Concert request for Friday, June 19th and Friday, June 17th.
I move to. Second.
Motion by Paul, seconded by Michelle. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries.
Item 3.4 is the Minnesota Beethoven Festival free concert street closure request for Thursday, July 2nd.
Move to approve that request.
Second.
Motion by George, seconded by Michelle. Great to have the Minnesota Orchestra back again. Looking forward to that. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries.
Item 3.5 is a request for use of Levy Park by the Ragnar Relay for their event on Friday, August 14th.
Move to approve that request. Second.
Motion by Michelle, seconded by Pam. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries.
Item 3.6 is a request to hold the Warrior Waddle on Saturday, September 26th.
Move to approve that request.
I'll second it.
Motion by George, seconded by Al. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries.
Item 3.7 is a request for temporary on-sale wine and malt liquor license for St. Mary's University Homecoming on Saturday, June 27th.
Don't move.
Motion
Second.
by Paul, seconded by Michelle. Any discussion? Hearing none, vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries.
Item 3.8 is the Great River Shakespeare Festival street closure request for their second annual Will Run 5K on Sunday, July 19th.
Move to approve the request.
Second.
Motion by Michelle, seconded by George. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries.
Item 3.9 is a request for a premises permit for lawful gambling for the Winona Eagles Club to be used at Steiny's Bar, 501 West 5th Street.
Move to approve the gambling request.
Second.
Motion by George, seconded by Jerry. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries.
Item 3.10 is a license agreement for the Boats and Bluegrass event, September 22nd through the 27th, and the fast vendors are here if you have questions.
I move to approve the license agreement.
Second.
Motion by Michelle, seconded by Paul. Any discussion?
Just a comment, when we first approved this 10 years ago, it's really grown, and it's a wonderful event to the fall activities in our community. So thank you for the perseverance in continuing to run the festival and make it grow every year.
That's a great event. I have a question, though. Can it grow larger with, can you grow this event, or you don't want to, I assume?
Mayor and other councils. Yeah, we're pretty much at capacity with the campground, and we're happy to keep it at that size. So what that means is we're kind of shifting and adjusting the ticket prices every year to be able to grow and get bigger acts each year. So, but yeah, we're pretty limited unless we started parking the cars off-site somewhere and then shuttling people in. But we're happy keeping it where it's at.
Don't mess with success, I guess. All right. Well, thank you for all you do. Any other comments? George?
Just one question, Tom. Any idea how many people sneak in?
Sneak in, not very many. We catch a couple each
Okay.
year trying to, but they're not. They haven't been too good at it yet. So, yeah.
Good.
All right, we'll vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries.
Item 3.11 is the Main Street closure request for Thursday, May 28th and Saturday, May 30th.
Move to approve that request.
Second.
Motion by George, seconded by Michelle. Any discussion? David Bittner
Yeah,
is here if
see
he
that.
wants to speak.
Just have a question, obviously, how, are these the hours that you need, and if it's done any sooner than that? I mean, it's a great idea, but I'm just curious that if you need, you know, the whole morning on Saturday and stuff like that to do all of this stuff.
Probably not. We've worked very closely with Carlos Espinoza and his department, as well as Keith Nelson's department on this. And I don't think we'll need the entire morning for that.
Mhm. Okay, ever since we've restricted traffic to those one lanes, it's, in my opinion anyway, been an issue downtown. But yeah, I appreciate the comments.
Any other questions for David? Okay, thank you. We'll vote. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries.
Under new business, item 5.1 is the Bambanek Complex Improvement Plan. And Chad is here to give a presentation, and there were handouts here for council.
Mayor and Council, back in March, the Council requested that the Park Rec Department come back with some recommendations for the Bambanek Fields. And tonight, what I would like to do is discuss this area as a whole, the entire Bambanek complex, and not just necessarily how it relates to softball fields, but again, the entire complex. What we've done for you tonight is which may be not convenient from when the screen switches, but I did place, again, similar to the Levy Park discussion, a placemat style map in front of you, because we'll refer to Field 1, Field 2, Field 3, Field 4, Field 5, and Field 6, and then I'll quickly go through 3 and 4 and talk about 5 and 6. And if you're not familiar with the layout, sometimes that can get confusing, so I've provided that for you so you've got that visual in front of you. And then as we walk through this presentation, we'll present options for the complex. Each option contains the work needed for the fields and an estimated cost associated with those repairs. And then at the end of the presentation, certainly I'll offer suggestions of possible funding. So again, not that there's any confusion, we're talking about Bambanek Complex. And really, Bambanek Complex runs from Franklin Street, again, using Lake Winona as its southerly edge, again, to Hamilton Street, and then Sarnia as its northern edge. So again, as I reference this go through the presentation, again, we're talking about the entire complex. Again, what I did is try to break this down to 3 options. And option A really is just what I refer to as the CIP process. And this outlines improvements for field number 3, which is basically to strip the outfield, or to skim the outfield, or grade the outfield. Those terms are interchangeable. What that means is that you grade the outfield back, prepare it for seeding, and add irrigation. And the improvements to field 3 would also include fencing for safety purposes. This would include higher backstops and wings associated to field 3. This is to prevent foul balls from going into the street, protect spectators, protect those participants on other fields. Again, so safety feature to stop potential foul balls from entering those areas. It's really the same process for the improvements for field 4 as well. Again, this is to strip the outfield. Again, so you regrade that outfield, seed, add irrigation, and again, same fencing as in field 3. Improvements to Field 2 are the same. And then this is similar to the work that was completed on Field 5 and Field 6. This is a process that we've done through the CIP where we skim those fields, strip those outfields. Again, regraded them and seeded them. And then the other piece to option A is to address maintenance issues with the JC shelter. Now, I would qualify the issues with the JC shelter as more cosmetic than structural. The shelter needs some ceiling repair. The roof was completed, but the inside ceiling needs some repair. Things like adding upgrades to the electrical system, painting of the shelter. And then we have what I would call some minor issues with some support posts within the JC shelter. Okay, so then that really leads to this option A, the CIP process, and the estimated costs associated with this repair, this work. Now, again, I emphasize this in red on the slide. These are estimated costs, but these are based on recent work that we've done on Field 5 and 6, and then estimates that we received through the process that we were going through with Winona State. And so these are less than a year old as far as estimates are concerned. So again, if you look at Field 3 to repair that outfield that's in that neighborhood of $36,000, fencing for Field 3, approximately $12,000. And then we built in a contingency for Field 3 because we know that we need to add a drain basin so that there's proper runoff on Field 3, that we're not flooding the other fields or other areas that we use for recreational purposes. So we've added that contingency into the estimate. Field 4 is not the same size as Field 3. It's a little bit smaller as far as cubic yards are concerned. And so that outfield repair is a little bit less. It's in the neighborhood of $27,000. Again, fencing for Field 4 is a little bit less than 3. Field 4, though, does have a contingency for a drain basin and then some buried materials that are in that area that were left over from road construction projects going years back. Then Field 2, again, outfield repair, similar to Field 3 in size. It's in that neighborhood of $36,000. And then again, I emphasize that this JC shelter is an estimate, but again, doing work on the ceiling, those support posts, painting, electrical upgrade, we're just estimating at $25,000, which gives you that grand total for option A of $157,095. So what I did is just try to lay out some pros and cons of using option A or proceeding with option A. Certainly this would provide a temporary improved playing conditions. It is a lower cost. It adds irrigation. Certainly safety is improved. And again, another positive would be the repair of the JC shelter. And again, I emphasize the temporary improvement in playing conditions because we know in this location that if you skim the outfield, and you'll see here in the next option, if you don't excavate and fill that area, we really begin a cycle of a perpetual fixing of the fields. So it is a temporary fix. So for example, if we would repair Field 3, then 4, then 2, the likelihood of us coming back to the council and saying we need to do some work on Field 6 is likely. And so again, this is a perpetual pattern then of repairing fields. Option B, we just classified as a Field 1 standard to give you some kind of idea of what we're talking about here. When we talk about improvements to Field 3, we're talking about outfield and infield repair. This is what I alluded to. This means bringing the fields up to the standard of Field 1. So that's excavating off the top layer, bringing in fill material, provide a fine grade surface for seeding and irrigation. Again, that would bring Field 3 and Field 4 and Field 2 up to the standard of Field 1. Again, we would include the fencing for the backstops and wings for Field 3 and Field 4. And of course, continue to address those maintenance issues with the JC shelter. So again, using recent estimates for field work that we've done, and again, work that we looked at with the Winona State proposal, Field 3 outfield and infield repair to meet that Field 1 standard is estimated at $368,000. Fencing and contingency really stay the same. Again, Field 4 a little bit smaller than Field 3 in cubic yards. That estimated cost is $297,775. Field 2 is very similar to Field 3. Again, you see that $368,000 amount. The JC shelter, again, repair for a total of $1,091,475. Again, pros and cons of option B. Again, this multiple fields now meet the standard of Field 1. We look at this as more of a long-term fix. Field 1 is on its 7th season. The field is in good shape, and we see no signs of immediate repair. So again, we look at that as a long-term fix. Again, this would include irrigation, repair the JC shelter, safety is improved with those wings. Certainly, one con could be a funding source, which I'll get into here in a few minutes. Option C is what we would consider a long-term option for the Baminick Field Complex. Now, everything in this option is the same as far as improving Field 3 and 4 to the standard, Field 3, 4, and 2 to the standard of Field 1. But it adds a multi-purpose field at the east end of the complex. So what we're talking about here is a multi-purpose field closest to Hamilton Street. So again, this is Hamilton, and again, relationship to Field 3, 4, and 5. This area has a small playground and a few trees that we've tried to keep in place with this placement of this multi-purpose field. Again, what this provides for us is an open green space for athletic activities. So it's really an athletic field. Multi-purpose field could be used for a variety of activities. And again, the reason why I mention this is because what we're seeing is, just real quick, this is the band shell area. So this is the band shell here. And so this is how the Baminick complex affects other activities in the park system. We are now seeing more and more individuals use this space behind the band shell for athletic activities. They're using it for soccer practice, lacrosse practice, not what we would say is designated as an athletic field. Now, across the road, we have 2 soccer fields. Those sites are not irrigated. The grass is dry, frankly dead, and so it's not exactly the most ideal use, and so we're seeing people going across the road and using this space. So again, if we go back, this area in that east side of the complex could accommodate a U10 soccer field, for example. In this particular drawing, they outline like a half of a football field or a 45-yard football field and the potential for 2 baseball fields. That's not something that we would necessarily emphasize or promote. Again, we would look at this more as an open green athletic space, multi-purpose use.
Say, Chad?
Yes?
Is that not where the playground equipment is located?
Yes, so we would recommend taking out the playground equipment in this area.
Could that be replaced at all in another part of the park?
It could, yep. So again, option C is estimated costs. Again, these are, option C is to the standard of Field 1. The real addition is the multi-purpose turf field. And again, I emphasize that that's an estimate. We haven't done a lot of work on this particular field, but that is an estimate to put in a multi-purpose turf field. That would raise option C's total to $1,429,475. So again, looking at this longer-term option for the Baminick Field Complex, we keep those same pros of the multiple fields meeting the standards of Field 1. I think the significant issue here is that appropriate athletic use in appropriate spaces. So now we have athletic fields being used where they should be being used or designated to be used. Again, a con potentially would be the funding source. Which leads me to this slide, which I think most of you remember from the Levy Park Committee. I think it's an appropriate slide to use when we talk about funding options. And again, we talk about park projects using a mixed funding of both public and private dollars. I think I'm going to go to each end of the spectrum here and kind of work back to the middle. But really, this is really general fund. This is meaning city dollars being used to upgrade those fields. The potential for special levies, similar to what we talked about in Levy Park, the potential for a local option sales tax, or going out for a bond referendum, for example, would be a way to do public funding. To the other side of the spectrum would be private funding. If we had a private donor or another entity, whether it be a 501c3 that would be willing to assist us in the rehab of those fields, so private dollars, all the way to corporate sponsorships. Again, do we want to do naming rights for the fields as a way to generate some revenue? One of the activities that we do in this chart is earned income. So the Park Rec Department does take in fees that assist in a field development fund, and is a reserve fund used for maintenance of the field. So each time a softball team registers with Park Rec Department, currently $55 goes into a field development fund. Now, that field development fund does not grow exponentially. As of today, the balance in that field development fund is $132,000, or $132,248.64. Now again, it doesn't grow exponentially because we're only multiplying the number of teams by $55 per year. So for example, if you take the number of teams that we had this year multiplied by 55, at the end of 2015, we'll add $4,785 to that field development fund. So again, it takes a while for that to grow, for that fund to grow. So again, there's not necessarily a lot of dollars, but there certainly are some dollars allocated in that fund. So this is really a chart that I want to explain as it relates to that funding growing exponentially. If you look at this chart, it's hard to read on the bottom, but obviously the axes here show you the number of teams that register for softball and associated years. If you look at 2006, that was our high point. We had 119 teams register for adult softball. In 2015, we're down to 87. So it's a 32-team spread from 2006 to 2015. So again, that's where I get that number for the amount being added back into 2015. We're taking 87 teams times that $55. With that, I'll open up for any questions that you may have.
Chad, I have a question. That last slide where you talked about the declining number of participating teams. What do you attribute that loss of numbers to? Is it the condition of the field? Is it just simply the demographics are changing, or is it all the above?
Well, I think it's a combination of all the above.
Okay.
I have a real belief, though, that it's changing demographics as the main primary focus. This trending line is very similar to the state of Minnesota. If you would take all the teams that were in the state of Minnesota, or the teams that register for or register through USSSA or ASA, that trending line is very similar. So that leads me to believe that it's not 100% attributed to the playing conditions. Certainly this is a trend in recreation. I think if you want to go one step further, I think it's a trend in, I guess I would put it my generation, that we're chasing our kids in youth sports or other activities, and that we're not, as a generation, we're not participating in team sports or adult sports as much as we used to. I think that's really the relationship of that line declining.
Well, with that thought in mind then, is it logical to assume that moving forward we'd want 6 softball fields to be up to the standard of 1? Or is it possible that in the next 10 years 2 of those fields might be better used in some other sport, or you told me there are some seniors that are taking on different activities even than tennis. Is it possible that all 6 fields would not be needed in a decade?
Yeah, that may be true if the fields are only used by our adult sports teams, but we do accommodate several schools, and they use those fields for practices and recreational purposes. I think I would recommend that if that number continue to decline, that, yeah, we have to take a serious look at whether or not 6 fields would be necessary. And again, that's why we put that option C as potential down the road for multi-purpose fields. Because we're seeing higher numbers in those other activities and the request for those types of fields in field space. But again, I think it's important to know that the fields are used significantly. I mean, their use is high. It's not necessarily always should be contributed to the adult softball program. The school districts use them heavily as well.
Chad, first off, thank you. It's an excellent, you guys did a really good job with this. Question, if we did, and I'm not leaning in any particular direction, but if we did number 1, right now we're doing basically parts of number 1, 1/6 of it kind of every year. If we did all of it in 1 year, which would be 4 fields, 3.5 fields basically, is that possible? Or would that disrupt are we still going to be stuck with 1 a year is my point? If all of a sudden you had a couple $100,000 to do this or 150?
Yep. My reaction to that would be, it's twofold. One, I think that if teams and schools want those quality fields, there may be a time period where we're down for a period of time and don't have access to those fields. Our department then would look at other locations. We've used the middle school field for our adult programs while another field's being used. I think we would have to have some serious discussions with Winona State regarding Field 1 and that allowing more of our teams onto that field at different times, that would be outside the license agreement. So we would look at the license agreement adjusting that. But it certainly would have an impact if we did all 3 fields to accommodate even the 87 teams that we have, and again, the schools, the use that the schools have, the use of the schools as it relates to the fields at Bamanek.
Okay, well, thank you. And then follow up to that, if for option 2 or 3, or B or C, a lot more work, how long does it take to do? We know the time frame it takes to do each field to option A. B and C, how long does it take to do a field like that? Do we know?
Again, as a project, as a whole project like that, it would be about the same timeline.
Oh,
I mean, there would
okay.
certainly be a little bit extra time for the excavation, but really if they're going to come in and do that entire area, we've had that discussion about doing 3 and 4 at the same time, and they're obviously right next to each other. If you're going to have, there's an economy of scale to having it being done at the same time. So.
Okay.
On the option A portion, how long are we talking about a fix for A? How long is it before you have to invest the money again, the resources again, to get the fields back up to a playable standard?
Yeah, I don't have any specific timeline. I think we're concerned that, 3 years from now, we would be back to field 6, and so that would be a 9-year spread approximately. Because we didn't do a field this past year, or this 2015, I guess is the better way to say that. And so if you go back, it's about a 9-year spread maybe before we have to go back and start relooking at the fields. Again, I can't say that with significance, but we know that past history would show that, the way the fields settle without proper fill.
I was interested in your comments about the field that's right across from the band shell. You said that it was it's used by people playing soccer, but it's in very poor shape. It's in poor shape, and yet it's not part of the plan. Why?
Yes, so Pam, I'm back. Are you talking about these soccer fields? Yeah, that area is not irrigated. That's something we think should be included. Maybe we'll bring a proposal forward for the 2016 budget to irrigate that. That certainly would help that area, the grass to grow. We would probably take some time where we would say you can't use those fields so that they came in properly. But yeah, the grass is very difficult to grow in here. They're heavily used. It's matted down. There's a lot of open spots which is dirt. And so we're seeing people go over and use this area behind the band shell as an alternative.
Well, it's a large field. It's a lot of space there especially compared to your proposal to build the little multi-uses used field down on the east end.
Certainly this area could be looked at as a multi-purpose turf field in this area as well.
I would like to see that included in the plan. Is there some reason that it's not included in the plan?
No, nothing specific to this area, no. We've just looked at that Baminick Field area as more of a complex.
Okay.
Is that where you know, again, is that where you put the athletic fields? That's really the only intent we had with that option C. But certainly, I wouldn't be opposed to having any type of multi-purpose turf field in this area.
Well, speaking of changing demographics, if a lot of people like to use that for their soccer, would like to use that for their soccer, there's a resurging interest in soccer, perhaps compared to softball. It would make sense to accommodate that.
Where you put those pickleball fields?
Yep. Something we have to address. I think at the last council hearing, Mayor, I suggested that, the plan in 2015 is to fix these band shell tennis courts. And then I think I had mentioned that pickleball, the most logical location as it relates to tennis courts, would be Sobieski 4th Ward Park, to redo those tennis courts with a combination of a pickleball court.
What would it cost to irrigate those two fields?
I think it's about $40,000. What happens there?
Or both or each?
Mayor and Council, and I'll give you a little history about that a little more, but I don't want to go too far into it. But with that, actually, when we dredged and we brought fill in there, fill was added to that place. But what we really didn't have is a lot of good grass to go in that particular thing, so it kept that fill. So we've got sand in a lot of those areas. What we want to do is really at Veterans Park, which Jerry is well aware of, those monuments and also the flags and those particular things, when the water comes from the the well that we have there, they turn brown. That could actually be changed. We put a little bit bigger pump. We use their whole system right there, and we irrigate that area right there and add fill in that particular thing. So it's actually killing two birds with one stone. And they would go back to city water at that particular time, which would be a benefit to Veterans Park. We've had that out there in the CIP, and it keeps pulled back. But now you see the fields used so much more right now, they're almost barren if you went out there. So if that answers your question.
Okay, so that was
About 40,000, but that was, 3 years ago or whatever that we did that, so.
For both fields?
Yep.
Okay.
And changing the whole well and everything.
Thank you. I've got a question, Chad, actually a couple of questions, maybe Maynard can answer one too. We currently have a number of tournaments that come in to use the fields. I'm kind of curious as to numbers. I mean, you talk about softball teams. Are the numbers of tournament participants going down as well?
Tournaments in this particular have gone down. There's not as many, it's a longer story because there's ASA, USSSA, NSF. There's 3 different organizations. At one time, there was only 1. Then it went to 2, and now there's 3. With that, then for state tournaments and things like that, it's a lot more split up. So instead of having 60 teams in a tournament, like we've had many, many years ago, now we have a lot less, sometimes 10, sometimes 12, or whatever.
Because they're playing in other tournaments.
Right, because they're playing
Sanctioned,
multiple.
yeah.
The other part of it is in a state tournament and whatnot, it used to be a big thing to be the state champion. Well, now when there's 3 state champions, there's not a big thing. And with that, the independent tournaments, we have about 30 around this whole area, within a 100-mile radius. They can go there and make money going to tournaments in independent tournaments rather than go to state tournaments.
Okay. And then my second question relates to the comparison in option A with the other ones. You talk about an outfield repair and an infield repair. Are both options regarding outfield repair the same? In other words, you go down the same amount, or are the outfield repairs a little more complex as we go into the other options?
When we talk about option B and C, when we talk about bringing the fields up to the standard of 1, that is the entire field, infield and outfield, excavated, fill brought in, regraded for seeding and irrigation.
So in option
In
A?
option A,
Okay.
it's just really a skim. You basically just skim the top layer off, regrade it, reseed.
Has that been done on any of the fields in the past,
It has been done on 5 and 6.
5 and 6? And how long has that lasted? Is that how you base the 3-year lifespan basically on it?
Well, like Michelle had asked, I said maybe that's more about a 9-year lifespan.
Okay.
But Field 5, this will be the first year that we actually play on Field 5, since it's been redone.
What are the deficiencies of the infield that you need to repair those for?
There aren't as many deficiencies in the infield as there is the outfield, but again, if it's an exaggeration, the outfield has some undulations. The infield certainly has that as well. And again, back to economy of scale. If we're going to bring in heavy trucks and start excavating out the outfield, you might as well take that small space that includes the infield along with the outfields and level that out and get a solid plain surface. If you would go to the outfields and excavate out those outfields, bring in the infill, grade for seed, we'd worry about runoff issues, leveling, a lip between the infield and outfield. It's typically done as one project.
Plus, there's what's called wafering, and that's what it is on the infield. You'll see throughout the year, you'll see the difference as it gets worse as it goes. It's not as level as what it could be when you do it correctly. Much like doing tennis courts and doing a good base and as opposed to putting it right on top of people on the
And how deep does this process go with option A? I mean, we talking 4 inches, 5 inches, as opposed to 2, 3, 4 feet?
Yeah, from option B to option A, option B, a really good process would be to go down 5 feet, bring in another 3 feet of fill. On option A, just skimming them, you may go down 12 inches, maybe somewhere in that range.
It's more than I thought.
What kind of action are you asking us to be, what's the next step involved in this process?
Yeah, we're not
Tonight was
requesting
meant
any.
for informational.
Yeah, I think tonight was strictly for informational purposes. We did not plan for any action items tonight.
I mean, I wasn't thinking about tonight, but I mean, going forward.
I'd like to make a recommendation, but not on an action item. Again, thank you to you and your staff. This is excellent. We could talk on this for hours and hours, but I think if we could individually bring any of our thoughts and concerns up to Chad and his staff, and then we bring this thing back, and I don't have an answer yet or an idea yet, but this is an awful lot to think about, and you've given us exactly what we're looking for. I mean, this is great. But I don't know, Mr. Mayor, if we want to put a time frame on it yet, but we certainly have more questions as we read this to get back to them on.
Well, I agree. I think we should give the staff some individual input, but
Yes.
I think that this is going to be a part of the budgeting process, so that might be the time
There you go.
to talk dollars, I guess, and how much we can put into this project.
Okay, so
Personally, I guess I just want to say that, the cheap fix doesn't interest me as much as the right fix. And I don't want to be doing this over and over, and to me, that's kind of a waste of money. So I'd like to do it right if we're going to do it.
I agree with you. So given that, and given the time that you're going to need our input, if you could get back with us, knowing the budget process and the time, and knowing you're going to have to get some answers to any questions, like the drop dead date on any further questions, so we can have an educated answer for budget time.
The CIP process starts in early May. So we're about 30 days away from the CIP process for 2016 and beyond.
So we got 2 weeks to give you input. That gives you 2 weeks to,
Yep.
okay, end of the month.
I mean, based on your input, I mean, yeah, we potentially we'd have to get some, based on your input, we'd have to, put the pencil to paper on some of the items specifically. But,
And you said that process starts when?
we're about 30 days away from staff starting the CIP process.
So you really have about a month.
You have about 30 days.
We've got 2 weeks, you guys have 2 weeks.
No,
We have about 30 days.
Oh.
yep.
You as a council have about 30 days.
George?
Hobbs, thanks.
Yeah,
Wait,
just-
sorry, George.
No,
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, just,
I mean, from staff purposes, sorry, George. I mean, 2 weeks would be ideal if I get feedback. That gives us certainly more time as a staff than to work within those 30 days. I guess I would appreciate the feedback within 2 weeks. It just gives us more time to prepare.
well, I'll give you mine right now, and I got two things. First of all, give us the best plan. I agree, I don't want nothing below the best plan. Give us the best plan. And number two, I remember when I started playing, all the games were played up at West End Rec, and I think we had like field 1 or 2 down by the lake. Do you remember what year 3, 4, 5, and 6 came in? 1978 they came in? Okay.
So, George, Field 1 was dedicated to Mike Bamanick in 1968, and then it went forward from there.
Okay, so I know field 1 and 2 were there, so, all right. But give her the best, that's my input.
And I would give my input too, that I lean towards options B and C, and plus the area by the band shell being irrigated so that it becomes, now whether we went to the area by the band shell as an alternative to developing that special field on option C, or even just leaving that as green space on C. But I think that it would be foolish not to irrigate that area, and that would be my lean.
Okay,
Al?
thanks.
Well, given our previous discussion over the year about the Winona State proposal for assisting this, well, there's, you didn't include lighting, but then again, if you had all the fields, you probably wouldn't need the lighting, would accommodate these decreasing number of teams. But B, I'd like to hear, and I'm sure other members of the council would like to hear, from those people who were involved in our earlier discussion on how this whole area should be developed. We've heard a lot of negatives that Winona State shouldn't take it over, but we'd like to hear from people, I think, on this design and what they think of it and what they give us as advice, because they're going to be the taxpayers paying for it. Admittedly, with option A, we have pretty much everything already in place to do these, Band-Aid approaches. But I'm interested in seeing how people feel about $1.4 million or $1.1 million.
As long as Al alluded to it, you'll notice that in our proposal, we did not include lights. If the fields remain the way the fields are today, and we don't feel we need night lights to accommodate the number of teams that we have. That doesn't mean in the future that we wouldn't bring back our proposal.
Right.
Uses change, the multi-purpose field use might change. We may bring back recommendation for lights, but as the fields stand today as we speak, we did not include lights in the recommendation.
I agree.
All right, well, thank you, Chad.
Thank you.
And on to the next item. Item 5.2 has been pulled from the agenda. So the next one is item 5.3, and it's the park maintenance change.
This is moving park maintenance from Public Works to Parks and Rec.
I'll move the recommendation.
Second,
Motion by Paul, seconded by George. Discussion?
Mayor?
Yes.
Yeah, for Keith or Judy, how will the service, will it be improved? Will it be expanded? I mean, what are we looking, I know where it's going to, but,
I think it'll make for a much more efficient operation,
okay.
and better coordination between the operations, the planning people, and the maintenance people. That's certainly the whole intent, is to make it a more efficient operation.
How long has the park maintenance been in park or Public Works?
Oh, you're asking that? I came in 1989, so it was just before that, 87, 88.
That's about right, yeah.
Okay. Al?
Question on this. What was the logic behind keeping the tree crew as part of the Department of Public Works?
The basic part of that is the tree crew really works on public right-of-ways.
Okay.
And so keeping it within the street department and coordinating it there made more sense.
Okay.
It's not strictly a park issue, it's much bigger issue than parks.
Good. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same side. Carries.
Item 5.4 is the Teamsters 2015 labor agreement.
Move to approve the labor agreement with the Teamsters.
Second. Motion by George, seconded by Paul. Discussion? Any questions, comments? Hearing none, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries.
Item 5.5 is the police officers LELS 2015 labor agreement.
Move to approve.
Second. Motion by Jerry, seconded by Paul. Discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries.
Item 5.6 is the First Amendment to the agreement for the purchase of fire apparatus, and there's a resolution for your approval.
And the chief is here. Chief Biddle, would you like to say a couple words?
I have a number of contracts, if you don't mind me standing here. We will be taking delivery of our new apparatus the tail end of December, first part of the year, January. And in that process, we'll be trading in our two old aerials to Pierce. Historically, the department has traded in our fire trucks through the truck manufacturer that's building our new vehicles. Currently, that's the way it is. Within the contract from Pierce, which I believe in your packet, is the agreement for purchase of fire apparatus. It's pretty well stated in paragraph 4. So if you can maybe take a peek at paragraph 4, which is payment, it explains, the cost of the trucks that we're getting reimbursed and so forth. In discussions with the city manager, we weren't real happy with the trade-in values that we were given, and we wanted to explore different options, preferably going through a broker, a third-party broker, to try to increase the trade-in value for our aerials. So we went through the process, and we dealt with Pierce, and to amend the contract that you're currently looking at, we came up with the First Amendment to the agreement for the purchase of fire trucks, which basically frees us up from being tied to that contract with Pierce. There's no guarantees we're going to make more money on it, but it's an option. I think it's well worth exploring. And within that First Amendment to the agreement, we are guaranteed to get what we were offered through Pierce if we don't sell it through the broker. So I guess what I'm asking at this time would be the approval to the First Amendment to the agreement, just to have that ability to try to get a better return on the current trucks that we have up for sale. So
I'll move the recommendation.
Second that.
Motion by Paul, seconded by Pam. Discussion? Al?
I'm noticing in your agenda item, you were delineating the two trucks that are being purchased, and one of them, body type 105 feet PAL, another one is 75 feet. What's PAL?
PAL, P is a body type, a body style, and
Okay.
the L is aluminum. So
Okay.
they're aluminum trucks with the P-type body style. If we went to stainless steel, it'd be PSS.
Okay.
So, yeah, there's a lot of goofy stuff in those contracts, but.
Okay. And so, legally, the city is not into a breach of a contract by doing this. I would have referred to our city attorney about that. I'm concerned about that since we're amending an already signed purchase agreement.
Correct.
Yes, Mayor and Council, just the opposite, that's the purpose of the agreement, to make sure that we're not in breach of our current contract with Pierce. The purpose of this is to allow us to do this. Pierce has agreed to allow us to do it,
Okay.
and obviously, the benefit is we might be able to make more money on the trade.
And even if we don't, we still have the base of what Pierce has offered for the trade-in vehicles.
You can't lose.
Well, hopefully.
Any other questions before we vote? Hearing none, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same side. Carries.
Item 5.7 is a listing and marketing agreement with Brindley Mountain Fire Apparatus.
I would move to approve the attached resolution.
Second that.
Motion by George, seconded by Pam. Do you have anything to say about this? Or more?
Just really quick, Brindley Mountain is probably the largest used fire truck broker in the country. And every trade journal, internet, they have trucks in it. So I believe this is probably our best route as far as getting a good trade-in price for the vehicles. So I recommend that we go with the contract for Brindley.
Okay. We have a motion. Any, George?
Just a question. What if someone from the public here right in Winona would say, I'm interested in buying that truck and I'll give you X amount of thousands of dollars for it, even to exceed the trade-in value? Is that something we could sell to someone here in the general public or wherever?
Yes, it is. And we may have a neighbor looking at our 105-foot aerial, and we felt it was important to, possibly have that broker be the middleman.
Okay.
So, but yeah, we'll utilize the broker
Okay.
for any sales.
Okay. Would John Rabarchik be interested in these?
No, I won't.
It wouldn't fit.
He'd need a bigger place.
Yeah.
All right, I think we're ready to vote. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries.
Item 5.8 is the new item on the agenda this evening. It's a memorandum of understanding with the City of Winona Professional Employees Association, known as COWPE.
I'll ask the city manager to say a few words about this.
This is our first request for someone within the city employment base to go on a phased retirement program. Mark Moeller has sent a letter with his intent to retire as of May 29th of this year. And he would then like to come back on June 1st in the phased retirement program, which the council did approve that we could consider. So this is our first request. The issue that we have here this evening is we need a memorandum of understanding with the association and the city for this individual to go to a part-time position.
I would move to authorize the mayor and clerk to sign the memorandum of understanding.
Second.
Motion by Al, and seconded by Michelle. Any comments? I guess I would just, I know Mark's not leaving, but he's certainly stepping down from a full-time position, and say thank you to Mark for his many, many years.
Many years.
We weren't even sure how many, but he's been here a long time, and he's done a great job.
And I'd just like to say in support of this motion that I agree with this whole process, that it keeps the talent, the experience, the knowledge in our area and treats people fairly, but we still, as a city, benefit from that continued expertise on our behalf. And as the mayor's appointee on the project that Mark will be involved with, that is redoing our zoning rules, I'm glad that this is going forward, because his expertise would be sorely missed if he weren't here.
Okay, well, I think we're ready to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries.
Item 7.1 is council concerns.
We'll start with Paul. I can't remember. I usually start on the ends.
I'll pass.
You're passing. Pam?
Yes, I have a concern about the mason jar site down on 3rd Street. The fencing that protects the site right now makes pedestrians walk out into the street to get around it. It's a big deal. You have to go around this whole thing. And I've seen people out in the middle of the street trying to pushing strollers and carriages around there. I'm wondering if that can be pulled in. I noticed that when the YWCA building was being being demolished, that the fencing around that was pretty conservative, close to the building. So I wonder if, I know this mason jar site will be as it is for a while, and I'm wondering if we could pull that fencing in to keep people out of the street.
We'll check on that. I think the difference in the sites were, this one, the building is built to the property line.
Yeah, I
So
know.
it might need to be a little bit further away, but we'll see what we can do about moving it in.
Or perhaps change something so that there's some walkway around the outside of that protected area.
Or some kind of barriers just to create
Right.
kind of a false sidewalk there or something.
Right.
Good point. Anything else?
It's everywhere.
Is that it, Pam?
That's it,
Okay,
thank you.
George?
Okay, thank you. Judy, any more communications or updates as far as with the railroad about block crossings? Are we hearing anything at all from anyone?
I have not heard personally from the railroad officials themselves.
Okay, but we'll have some communication coming up here in the
Yes.
next couple of weeks.
And we've continued to make them aware of issues and problems by contacting them through the complaint line.
Okay.
Yep.
Then also, I know we talked about doing a feasibility study or a engineering look at as far as overpasses on Mankato and Louisa Street. Could we also, again, take a look at Bundy Boulevard extension into Louisa Street? I know that was brought up. I know a few years back it was an ultimate, no, it can't be, but if we can look at that again to see if something, if it still becomes a player in anything as far as, the extension of Louisa Street.
I think we can come back with some issues that were raised last time that would still exist, and we need to look at.
If we could have
Yep.
those. Then also, I brought up in early January, having planning commission or whoever on staff look into runed-down housing and fire-related properties. For the attorney, if we have a fire-related property that's sitting abandoned, and we have probably a few in town, I know one for certain that's sitting 2 years, if they don't do nothing with it, can we go in and condemn that house? Because it's certainly not livable, and it's a hell of an eyesore to the neighborhood.
Typical process would be that the building inspections building official would declare the building hazardous. They would try to gain compliance. If they don't gain compliance with the property owner, then it would be turned over to our office. We would then come to the city council for an order.
Okay.
We have done this previously, not in the context of a fire, but in terms of a hazardous building. We did one probably a year or two.
Yeah, I recall that one, so. But like I say, there's a lot of runed-down housing that's not habitable. There's fire-related properties, and people get quite irritable when that's their neighbor. And, you can't blame the residents as they keep their properties up, so.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, we would need the building inspections, building official to initiate that action, start the process, and then if they can't get compliance, then they would come to us and we would come back to you.
And is there something we could put, like, in an ordinance form that we could go by all the time?
There's a statute already that allows us to do this.
Okay.
And we do have common law nuisance ordinances that would allow us to do it as well.
Okay, all right, thank you. And just on, just a couple of acknowledgements to Don and Jeanette Berg, who will be celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary, I believe on the 24th. And condolences to the family of Warren Wunderlich on his passing. Longtime Winonan, proud of Winona, and served us in insurance for many, many years. So to his family, my condolences. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle? Jerry?
Nothing this evening.
Yeah.
I don't know if those on council are old enough to remember, maybe Paul does, but at least I remember. No offense.
Thank you, Al.
I'm putting myself in that boat 50 years ago when I was a junior in high school, and I was out on Prairie Island sandbagging and had a great experience. I know both print media and I think the TV and maybe a little of the radio are recognizing that anniversary 50 years ago, that we had a significant potential catastrophe in the city, and everybody pulled together and you know, we came out on top. It wasn't an easy task, certainly, but, you know, you're involved in it on a day-to-day basis when it is, but you don't really think about it until afterwards, and sometimes 50 years later, that it was a significant event for this city, and without the cooperation of all of those involved, to a greater or lesser degree, everybody pulled together and we came out on the dry side of the river. So that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Al.
Under the consent agenda, there are 2 items, approval of the minutes from April 6th, and the final adoption of an ordinance to vacate a portion of the alley in Block 17 Hubbard's Addition.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Al, seconded by Michelle. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Passes.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion by George, seconded by Michelle to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.